I just learned my girlfriend feels neglected and used. She pointedly said, I can't sleep, I dread your calls, while I thought everything was perfect. Now I'm left wondering, how do I fix what I never knew was broken? Can I really win her back? Hi, I am a 23-year-old male who has been in a relationship with my girlfriend for just over a year. Overall, our relationship is quite positive, but we recently experienced our first argument, and she has been behaving differently since then. How can I repair our relationship and win her back? My girlfriend is usually extremely sweet, affectionate, loving, thoughtful, attentive, supportive, understanding, selfless, and nurturing. She is truly one of the best individuals I have ever met. She consistently shows kindness to others, even to complete strangers, makes a point to engage with those around her, and brings joy to any space she enters. Honestly, I struggle to articulate the depth of love and appreciation she instills in me. I have never felt this way before. In the past few years, I mostly felt stressed and hopeless. For an extended period, all I desired was to exist in my own little bubble and be alone, but she has inspired me to look forward to the future once more. We even plan to purchase a home and live together once we complete our studies, get married, and start a family someday. I would describe our relationship as nearly perfect, with a few areas of dissatisfaction and disagreement. However, since our argument, she has suddenly become very cold and distant. I will admit that I have also been quite unaffectionate and distant with her over the last few months, primarily due to my work and study-related stress. My desire to spend time with her dwindled because my free time was limited, so I took every chance I could to enjoy solitude. I reached out to her less frequently, and we hardly did anything together. I regret rejecting her as often as I did. She has also had to pause her studies and work due to recurring health problems, yet she continues to receive the same salary from government assistance. Thus far, doctors have been unable to determine the exact cause of her issues, although they suspect it is stress-related. She suffers from chronic migraines, feels fatigued after even minor tasks such as household chores, and tends to get sick frequently. She was recently diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism, and her psychiatrist suspects that she may be experiencing burnout. I mention this because it contributes to my distance from her. I do not want to be the only one in our relationship who is working. While I understand that she still receives assistance, I question how she envisions us financing a house in the future, given that, if things continue as they are now, she might never be able to maintain long-term employment. I share this perspective because my older brother is also on the spectrum and shares similar challenges. Another aspect affected by her health is our ability to see one another. I always have to travel to visit her as she does not travel to see me. I do not own a car, so I rely on a car-sharing app for transportation. Although she offered to cover train tickets, I do not feel comfortable accepting such a significant expense from her. The travel can be stressful, especially when others sometimes cancel at the last minute, leaving me to scramble for a solution. By the time I arrive at her home, I am physically exhausted, and my social energy is depleted, so I seek some time to myself. Additionally, I recognized early in our relationship that I do not enjoy physical contact, which is her primary love language. I did not express this to her until after our argument because I hoped that my feelings would change over time, especially after I finished my studies and became less stressed. Regarding the main issue, during my most recent visit, I offered to watch a show with her that she had been eager for us to enjoy together for months. We viewed a few episodes that evening, and I genuinely enjoyed them. However, the next morning when we woke up, my girlfriend was not feeling well. The night before, I had shared the car with a teacher who was sniffling and coughing frequently, so I likely contracted something from him and passed it on to her. She asked if it was all right for her to lie down again and if we could continue watching the show together later, to which I agreed. She even confirmed this with me 3 times. Now here is where I made a mistake. After 2 hours, I began watching the show again on my own. I realize this sounds trivial, but I honestly did not think it would be such a significant issue and believed I could simply rewatch the earlier episodes with her later. I woke her up around 1 p.m., and when she walked into the living room and saw what was on the television, her expression changed immediately. She asked why I had continued watching without her, and I panicked. I apologized, explaining that I had not realized it would hurt her. However, she did not respond and went straight back to her bedroom. I attempted to talk to her, but it was as though she were absent. I had never seen her react like that. She appeared completely detached, only occasionally tearing up. Throughout the day, I tried to make amends and apologized multiple times, but she continued to avoid me. I even attempted to cuddle with her, which is something she usually craves, but she rejected me, showing no interest. When I tried to snuggle with her in bed that night, she simply took her pillow and moved to the couch. At that point, I chose to let it go and give her space. The following morning, I returned home as planned, not because she asked me to leave. It has been 2 weeks since then, and she remains cold and distant. I have been reaching out to her almost every day, asking how she is doing, if she feels neglected by me, or if she is happy in our relationship, but she only provides brief responses or excuses for not being able to talk. She persists in saying that she is exhausted but does not offer explanations or anything else me to work with. Last Sunday, I finally told her we needed to discuss our relationship, and she revealed an extensive, detailed list of all the things I have done wrong. I will summarize it here. 1. I forgot her birthday because I did not take the time to note it down. I only realized my mistake days later after she casually mentioned a planned birthday dinner with her grandmother. I apologized but did not remember to write down the date, which is foolish. Apparently, I asked her about her birthday 8 additional times in the months following, and she actually documented that. I also never tried to make amends or purchase her a gift. She ended up buying herself a gift, 2 tickets to an event, and invited me to accompany her as a birthday present. I reluctantly agreed after initially hesitating because I did not want to attend. I made a few offhand comments in the months leading up to the event, which she perceived as guilt-tripping. Ultimately, she informed me that I did not need to attend if I did not want to, so I chose not to go. 2. I stood her up on Valentine's Day despite having a date planned. Honestly, I was simply fatigued after school and decided to take a nap. When she reached out to me, I canceled our plans because I did not feel up to it. She believes that I would not have canceled if she had not contacted me. I apparently never apologized or attempted to make amends regarding this incident, nor did I offer her a gift. 3. I also stood her up on our anniversary for almost the same reason as Valentine's Day. According to her, I did not really acknowledge it either. 4. I ignore and ghost her for days at a time, leaving her to reach out or initiate activities. She counted and noted that I once ghosted her for 10 days. She asserts that I only contact her when I want or need something, or when I am bored or lonely and no one else is available. 5. I frequently reject her and have sometimes put her down. I will admit that I have made a few thoughtless remarks, but they were not intended to be malicious. 6. I engage in activities with other individuals that I refuse to do with her, and then share those experiences with her. 7. During the rare times I begrudgingly agree to spend time with her, she feels that I guilt-trip her the entire time by acting bored or displeased. 8. According to her, I once directly told her that I could not force myself to be interested in the things she enjoys or considers important. 9. When she attempted to confide in me about a traumatic experience from her childhood, I interrupted her and said, "I do not want to hear about it. I do not like drama." 10. I criticize and belittle her regarding her spending patterns, despite her earning more than double what I make, lacking expensive hobbies, not going out often, and saving most of her earnings. She claims that I subconsciously impose considerable pressure and stress on her due to her health issues and lack of employment at present, and that I inadvertently make her feel like a gold digger, even though I do not financially contribute much to her, and she typically covers most joint expenses, such as travel and groceries when we meet. 11. She contends that I make no effort to connect with her, failing to ask questions or express interest in her life. When she discusses topics unrelated to me or my interests, I apparently come across as bored or indifferent. 12. I do not compliment her unless she compliments me first. 13. I neither create nor purchase gifts for her, which she claims she does not mind. However, I also downplay the gifts she gives me. I do not enjoy receiving presents or her spending money, so I make it clear that I do not want anything or that I do not appreciate her gifts. Nevertheless, she continues to buy me things because, according to her, she enjoys gift giving and likes to get me items that remind her of me, or that she believes I would appreciate as a gesture of love and support during stressful times. 14. I make false promises or lie. For instance, I tell her I am planning an activity for us to do together on the weekend. She frequently checks in, asking if I have done it to confirm, and I reassure her that I have. Yet when the weekend arrives, we end up not doing anything because I never even attempted to make arrangements. To be honest, this has happened several times because she tends to persist until I agree, even when I am too fatigued to do anything. 15. Whenever she tries to communicate her feelings, I respond dismissively, often saying, "I am sorry you feel that way," or turning it around on her. I honestly am not accustomed to people sharing their emotional concerns with me and struggle to respond appropriately without sounding rude. For example, when she expressed feeling lonely, I reportedly responded that it was because she did not have friends. 16. I encouraged her to meet new people and make friends, but when she does, I accuse her of engaging in inappropriate behavior, talking to other men, being overly friendly, and flirting. She indicated that her best friend advised her to simply pursue her hobbies, which would naturally lead to meeting new people with similar interests. As she plays video games, if someone messages her, she interacts with them without considering their gender. My girlfriend tends to believe in the inherent goodness of people. She wrongly assumes everyone shares her moral compass, and since she would never engage in unethical behavior, she believes no one else would either, as it simply does not make logical sense to her. She is very kind, friendly, and forgiving, but also quite naive, gullible, and overall inexperienced in social situations. As a result, I often try to caution her and prepare her for potential negative experiences. 17. I tell her that other men whom she is attempting to befriend in a platonic manner are not genuinely interested in her personality and only desire a sexual relationship. Additionally, I reportedly taunted her when one individual actually ghosted her after she mentioned me. Instead of providing comfort, I repeatedly said, "I told you so," and appeared genuinely pleased or proud. 18. I engage in hurtful behaviors, such as the incident 2 weeks ago at her apartment, and refuse to acknowledge the effects of my actions on her. I recognize that a similar situation occurred previously where we promised one another to watch the latest season of a show together upon its release. She waited until the weekend to watch it with me, only for me to inform her that I had already viewed it alone during the week. 19. When she received her autism diagnosis, which was a significant milestone for her, my only response was, "Just do not let it negatively affect your work and nothing more." 20. When her childhood dog passed away, she reached out to her best friend rather than me, fearing that I would exacerbate her distress. I am still unclear what she meant by that. A few days later, when I finally contacted her, she mentioned being comforted and consoled for a mere 15 minutes before she perceived my attention as shifting since I had been playing a video game while we talked. She also remarked that 30 minutes later, I lectured her about her spending habits again. 21. I am not affectionate or loving. Throughout the entire time we have been together, I have only hugged her 8 times and kissed her fewer than 10 times, almost always in response to something she has done for me or when she has asked or begged for it. She recalls this because those moments are memorable for her since they are rare occurrences. According to her, I show my dog more affection in just 10 minutes than I do for her over several months. I brush her off whenever she tries to hug or cuddle with me. At times, I will simply reject her. I do not allow her to lean against me on the couch. She has also indicated that when we walk in public and she wants to hold my hand, I allow it but practically drag her along because I refuse to slow down for her, given our size difference. Additionally, if she does not hold my hand or jog to keep up with me, I will walk ahead to a distance that makes it seem like we are not together. On one occasion, I apparently threatened to sleep on the couch when she attempted to cuddle with me in bed. In her view, my only shows of affection occur when I randomly grab her butt. 22. She has not yet experienced a first date because I dislike all of her ideas, but have made no attempts to propose or consider any alternatives myself. 23. She claims that she must handle all emotional labor on her own. She perceives herself as the only one investing love, effort, and commitment into the relationship. She believes that the only reason I visit her every few months is that it allows me to avoid chores at my own place for the weekend, aside from contributing to groceries. I once acknowledged that I appreciated staying with her because I would not have to do dishes at home, and because it gives me the boyfriend treatment without actually having to fulfill that role. She feels like a maid or a mother and believes our relationship is one-sided. 24. I refuse to educate myself about a disorder she has that significantly impacts her. According to her, this demonstrates my lack of interest in her and contributes to my failure to show adequate understanding and support. That about sums it up. She mentioned that there was more but was too exhausted or unmotivated to write everything down, especially as she feels it should be common knowledge. I decided to call her to discuss it, and after several attempts, she eventually answered and immediately began expressing how selfish, self-absorbed, cold, unempathetic, uncaring, unaffectionate, unsupportive, lazy, and emotionally stunted I am. She stated that I routinely treat her with complete disregard, do not even meet basic expectations of a boyfriend, and that I exploit her. She claimed that I consciously choose to ignore or feign ignorance about how my actions affect her, and that I am willfully oblivious to the pain I cause her through my treatment of her. She feels that I do not respect or love her. According to her, I do not care about her as a person, only about what she can do for me. She indicated that I offer her occasional scraps of affection and talk about our future merely to manipulate her into staying. She feels guilted and neglected, expressing that she perceives herself as a placeholder or a temporary trophy. She stated that I am only with her because she was the first and only girl to show any interest in me, and because I want to impress my family, friends, classmates, and coworkers with my relationship, since she is my first girlfriend. Most importantly, she observed that I rely on her to create comfort for me and that she is finished with that dynamic. According to her, she constantly feels the need to defend me and create excuses for my conduct due to the negative opinions her best friend and family express regarding my inadequacy as a boyfriend and a man. She does not feel seen, heard, valued, respected, safe, loved, or wanted. At this point, she feels perpetually anxious and stressed, anticipating being hurt by me again. She experiences sleep disturbances, nightmares, and dreads my calls and visits, as our interactions always leave her feeling worse. Regarding our time together, she perceives no significant difference from being apart other than feeling more stressed when I am around, as she feels an increased burden. Additionally, she feels that I undermine her self-worth and attractiveness. Throughout her tirade, she maintained a polite tone rather than insulting me outright, yet her words were still profoundly hurtful. Honestly, I have never seen her exhibit such behavior before. Typically, she is gentle, soft-spoken, and sensitive, but this time she was shockingly cold, calculated, and resolute. While I do not concur with every point she made and have my reasons for certain views, I repeatedly apologized and promised to improve. I believe she was indifferent to my apologies as she kept reiterating, "I would never treat anyone the way you have treated me over the past year, let alone someone I love." I attempted to discuss things further, but she concluded the call, stating she could no longer handle the situation and was exhausted. Frankly, I am at a loss for how to proceed. I recognize that I have made significant mistakes and deeply regret treating her as I did. I was so engrossed in my own concerns that I failed to see how much pain I was causing her. She has been remarkably understanding, patient, and supportive, which led me to believe that our relationship was thriving. Since our conversation, I have reached out to her daily and made efforts to express my care and love for her, but she continues to ignore me. If anyone has advice on how I might regain her trust, I would greatly appreciate it. I have never experienced this level of love in a relationship before, and I genuinely cannot bear the thought of losing her. We frequently discussed our future, and I still desire that. Story 2. As a child of an expat, my life was a non-stop whirlwind of chaos and trauma. "You're just a dramatic foreigner," they said as I cried for help after months of bullying. Now, with my dad gone and my family strained, I'm finally embracing stability for the first time. But am I truly free? Right from the start, I apologize if this is lengthy. I do not expect anyone to read it all. It is substantial. This is the first time I can genuinely express my feelings about these matters. Everything shared here is real and continues to impact my life today. To begin with, the term expatriate is used to describe an individual who works in a foreign country but only stays there temporarily. As an expatriate, you are not typically meant to remain in one location for an extended period, usually ranging from a few months to 2 to 4 years. My father raised me in this world, and since his passing, I have been stuck in the same country for 4 years. I cannot express how anxious I feel now that the time I usually moved away is approaching. When I was 8 years old, living in my home country, my parents faced financial struggles. We were extremely poor, but they always tried to conceal that fact. They took my brother and me on lavish trips such as to Disneyland Paris for Christmas. However, there was always stress in our household, with shouting and furniture being tossed around. This was particularly the case with my father, who knew something that my mother was unaware of. The government required my father to pay additional taxes due to a childcare benefits scandal that was only uncovered in recent years. We had debt collectors at our door, particularly one who had a personal vendetta against my father. One day, my father was fired from his job. Suddenly, there was no more money coming in to support us. We had to survive on scraps for some time, and it was dreadful. We were at risk of losing our home. This was until my father searched international job markets and secured a position in Dubai. He would be working for an indoor theme park that was gradually establishing itself in the Middle East. This initial job was peculiar. I would go months without physically seeing my father. We were receiving money at home, but due to the scandal, it would soon dry up. The ultimate plan was for our family to relocate to Dubai to join him. I remember this vividly as an 8-year-old. I said farewell to my classmates and received an entire farewell book signed by everyone in my class. However, a few weeks before our departure, my father was fired for something that was not his fault. Someone shifted the blame onto him. If I could describe the emotion of returning to school after telling everyone I was leaving for a different country, it was excruciating. I was bullied more than before, even. However, it did not last long. About 2 months later, as the threat of losing our home became more imminent, my father received another job offer. Internationally once again. It was from a company attempting to replicate his previous employer in Lebanon. My father would be gone for another 4 months, leaving us alone in our country once more. By that time, I was being bullied for lacking a father, with other children claiming he had abandoned me. I always defended myself, saying he would return, and during a Christmas evening he did. This time, however, he instructed my mother to pack everything, as we would be moving with him. I cannot comprehend the psychological effects an unstable home would have on a child, but after moving to Lebanon, I gradually became affected by all the changes. To clarify, I was born with autism. Although I was never diagnosed because my father opposed the idea, his perspective on autism was extreme, and he insisted I did not fit the mold. Yet moving to a new country felt strange. We lived in downtown Beirut for the first year before relocating to an apartment in the mountains. I celebrated my ninth birthday at a Hard Rock Cafe and my 10th at an Applebee's. I loved the cookie with ice cream. I experienced many enjoyable things in Lebanon, such as going to play zones for children and exploring new malls. My father attempted to provide us with a more luxurious life since he had never experienced one. However, the stress at home began to affect both of my parents again. My mother gradually became a recluse, rarely leaving the safety of our apartment complex unless my father was there to take us out. My father became easily irritated and often yelled at either me or my mother. When they fought, it always ended up being directed toward me, exposing me to things that I did not need to know as an 8 to 10-year-old. I was also taught how to care for my brother, resulting in my childhood being gradually stripped away from me. School was dreadful. The physical abuse I suffered at an international school merely because I did not know English was not enjoyable. I learned English within 3 months and achieved a high reading comprehension level by that time. However, this did not prevent the bullying. Once I could understand everyone, it actually worsened. This has been a recurring theme throughout most of my life. I was often too kind and new, making me an easy target for exploitation until things reached their breaking point. My brother experienced similar issues, and there was nothing I could do to help ease his suffering except play with him on our Nintendo DS or the Wii. At one point, I even had to explain terrorism to my brother. Lebanon was experiencing car bombs and shootouts during that time. I want to emphasize that I was 8 to 10 years old, and my parents asked me to clarify the situation to him because I was his role model. Eventually, my father's contract ended, and during that time, something shocking occurred that I must keep private for my own safety. We fled Lebanon after my father obtained a position in Mumbai, working for an established amusement park. During our time in Lebanon, he worked with 2 amusement parks, both of which did not extend his contract due to internal issues within the country. My father struggled to be taken seriously due to being a foreigner. They viewed him more as an object to collect rather than in his actual role, which at that point was chief operating officer of both parks. Around this time, my father taught me a very simplistic lesson. This is a fresh start, so let go of everything that came before and be a new person. And so I did. I severed my emotional attachments at the age of 12. I would form friendships, but none were lasting. They were merely ways to make myself happy. It may sound cruel and almost psychopathic, but I did not make a real friend until 2 years ago. My strongest attachments were with online role-playing friends because they could not simply leave me. My time in India was horrible. My brother and I were isolated from the rest of the world, only leaving home for school and occasionally to visit a mall. I was 11 when I started school again. My birthday is near the end of the year. I think this was the hardest period of my life and the first time I am publicly revealing this. At the age of 11, I was assaulted by a classmate. It occurred for about 3 to 4 months. When I sought help from people such as the principal, they dismissed me, saying I was merely a dramatic foreigner. When I confided in my father while crying and trembling in front of him, he looked at me and claimed he did not believe me. He accused me of fabricating stories for attention. After that, I began emotionally distancing myself from everyone, including my family. I developed anorexia after we moved from Mumbai to New Delhi, and my father hit me to force me to start eating. It also became increasingly evident that I was being labeled as the problematic child. Teachers struggled to deal with me and my grades plummeted. Both my parents referred to me as a disappointment and a burden. I forgave my father more quickly because of the stress he was under, but I still hold resentment toward my mother. She favored my brother, leaving me to figure things out on my own, such as dealing with menstruation, hormones, and body hair. I lacked someone to whom I could turn for assistance regarding what I was experiencing. Around this time, I began having nightmares and issues with self-harm, including panic attacks. Dissociation became a regular occurrence, to the extent that a school psychiatrist diagnosed me with dissociative identity disorder, an erroneous diagnosis. The only real comfort I found was among my online friends, and I can never genuinely express my gratitude to them for helping me through everything, even when I was awkward at times. My time in India lasted from the age of 10 and a half to 15. 5 years were spent moving from Mumbai to New Delhi in the middle of it. It is disheartening that I cannot accurately recall my age through all this, as I remember my life by the places I lived in. In India, the physical bullying became much more severe. Students attempted to scratch beneath my skin to see what lay underneath because I had a different skin color. I was beaten. At one point, I was even stabbed. At this point, the situation became overwhelming for me, and the depression truly began to set in. No matter how much my father attempted to buy my happiness with trips to different countries and material possessions, it never restored my lost childhood. I tried to end my life at age 15, but fortunately it failed. After his contract with the second park in India ended, my father was hired to assist with the construction of a theme park on Hainan, an island in China. I lived in a hotel for about a year in China, as the company was constructing on-site apartment buildings at the time, so we had to wait until they were completed. Living in the hotel was enjoyable, to be honest. It felt like a very extended vacation. However, the reality of the situation slowly began to sink in again once we resumed schooling. We attended a Canadian international school. Most of the students were Chinese, with a small section reserved for international students. There were 8 classmates. I say we because my brother and I were placed in the same class. I was 2 grades ahead of him, but due to the teacher shortage, they had to combine classes. I received instruction at the same level as my brother from an incredible teacher named Mr. Bryan, who truly tried his best. He taught us every subject except Chinese. However, after a year in China, he left. He was succeeded by Miss Raven, who was the first teacher to recognize my autism. Although she did not directly mention it, she taught me in a way that I could genuinely understand. She focused on my skills in English literature while also allowing me to express my memories of the painful past. She was the first person I felt safe with in a long time. It is strange to think that I enjoyed more freedom in China than in India. I was allowed to visit the supermarket and even go outside my apartment. I was even permitted to ride a scooter. Nevertheless, my relationship with my parents was reaching its breaking point. They continued to place every issue they faced on my shoulders. Some of the actions they took regarding me are thoughts I would rather avoid. Now that my father has passed away, I choose to remember the good times instead of the traumatic ones. Although I faced constant yelling, and even briefly experienced being disowned by my father due to discovering I was engaging in role-playing activities with people online, our relationship became irreparable from then on. I developed resentment toward him. After I turned 17, life began to implode once more. My grandfather was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and even after having his stomach removed, the cancer returned. COVID-19 began around this time, and my father was undergoing numerous tests because he had been unwell throughout his life and wanted answers. We took a trip to the United States to visit Universal Studios and Disney World. My father also showed interest in me now that I was fascinated by theme parks and their designs. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps. I contracted COVID-19 in China, which was a dreadful experience. I was dragged out of bed at 1 in the morning and taken to a rundown hospital, isolated from my family for over a month. During this time, my father received his test results. He had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I probably butchered the spelling. My father always tried to assure me that it was a readily treatable cancer and that he would be all right. Simultaneously, my grandfather agreed to euthanasia because he was in immense pain. I loved my grandfather. He sensed that something was wrong with me and consistently called out my parents for the way they treated me. He always believed in me, even though he was somewhat stoic. His death left me devastated. It did not help that my grandmother was now alone in her home, and a week after my grandfather's passing, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. With my father's treatment backfiring in China, we had little choice but to return to my home country so he could receive care. I was 18 when we moved back, and I spent my first 2 years there caring for my father. The treatments and cancer rendered him bedridden, so I was essentially watching him die slowly in front of me. I was pursuing nursing school during this time, but due to the constant care my father required, I could not always be present. My mother tried her best but needed to become the breadwinner and voice for our family. While caring for my father, she discovered our involvement in the childcare scandal and continues to fight for compensation. During this period, I felt like a zombie. I had no personality, no friends, I was merely existing. Then one day my father passed away. We were evicted from our home and are currently living with my grandmother, whose cancer has progressed to stage 4. At this point, I think I stopped believing I could live a normal life. My mother and I engage in constant arguments, and I often do not sleep in my bed because of it. I did, however, start a new education focused on computers, probably the best decision of my life. I have made many good friends who support me, including my current boyfriend with whom I plan to move in very soon. I am genuinely living my life and I love it. I am finally standing still, free from the constant worry of having to abandon everything and everyone. I have formed my first real attachment with my boyfriend and it feels good. Although I am nervous now that the 4-year mark is approaching, I know I will not be moving to another country again because my father found another theme park to support. I have received trauma assistance and have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, so I am finally getting the help I have always needed. I think I am finally happy, even though I remain somewhat unstable and struggle with attachment issues. After everything, I feel as though I am finally free. I again sincerely apologize if this was lengthy. I am just glad to have expressed it. Story 3. Fired from my coffee shop over sexual harassment allegations I didn't see coming, I was left in shock. I never knew I made people uncomfortable, I told the co-owner. How could it be? They laughed at my jokes. Now, as I face this unexpected betrayal, what did I do wrong? Throw away for anonymity. For context, everyone in this situation is above 18. Yesterday, I received a text from the co-owner of the coffee company where I work. He mentioned that he wanted to speak with me in person about some concerns that had come to his attention. I assumed it was probably related to my frequent requests for time off because I am graduating next week. He insisted on a face-to-face meeting, but I informed him that I would be busy for the rest of the week. He then agreed to a phone call. Feeling perplexed, I reached out to one of my team leads. Unfortunately, she had been giving me the cold shoulder for about a month. It started with her, and then several other individuals also began to either ignore my presence entirely or act very distant. I became extremely upset because I enjoyed this job and did not understand what was happening. Being neurodivergent and visibly queer, this treatment was not entirely new to me. However, I had worked with other queer, though primarily cisgender Generation Z coworkers. I am 23 for context, and generally felt comfortable around them. The team lead I contacted ignored my messages. I logged onto Instagram and realized that no one had really been messaging me as they used to for about a month. I figured that since I was merely a coworker and I hadn't been present, they had forgotten about me, which was whatever. I decided to check out some coworkers' accounts to message one of them and found that almost all of my coworkers had either unfollowed or blocked me. I started to cry. I could not comprehend what was occurring, especially since they had been the ones initiating conversations the last few times we interacted. I would send some memes and never received a response, or they would reply to my stories, followed by complete silence out of nowhere. The co-owner finally called me and mentioned that the owner was present. My stomach dropped. I knew it had to be something serious, but I was still baffled. The co-owner continued by saying that multiple coworkers had reported me for sexual behavior deemed too inappropriate for the workplace, and they no longer felt safe working with me. I became hysterical. The only thing preventing me from screaming in shock was my effort to stay composed during the call. Considering I was in a campus building working on something when I took the call, fortunately I was alone. He informed me that due to the severity of my actions, I was ultimately terminated. I felt dizzy. I almost felt like I would vomit. I was crying so hard that I could hardly see. I never would have expected this, especially given the nature of the jokes my coworkers made towards or about me. I thought of all the times I let their crude comments slide during shifts, responding with matching energy or simply saying, "Whoa, hey," and trying to move on. To be told I was unsafe to work with, it felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. He asked if I had any idea that my actions were making people feel that way. He allowed me a few minutes to gather myself. I eventually replied no, not at all. He said the nature of the behavior stemmed mostly from the way I joked with people. I immediately felt embarrassed. The fact that my coworkers initiated sexual jokes with me encouraged them and allowed the jokes to escalate to this point. I quickly apologized to him and expressed my sincerest apologies to my coworkers should they relay my message. The co-owner remarked that it was clear I was remorseful and shocked by the situation. Well, yes. I have never denied making anyone uncomfortable, as I have always taken such situations very seriously. However, I could only think of times when they made me uncomfortable first, and I attempted to joke it off or respond casually. I went through my apologies first. I told them I was utterly embarrassed, that I regretted they had to have this conversation, and that I was sorry I brought this energy into their workplace and made someone feel this way. He assured me that it was undoubtedly just jokes that had crossed a line, and that he had already talked to other coworkers, managers, and leads about what constitutes inappropriate behavior during shifts. The more I considered that comment, the more disheartened I felt that I hadn't been involved in those conversations before it escalated to this point. But ultimately, I had been away for a month. Prior to my absence, I had distanced myself from everyone. I realized these were jokes I no longer wanted to make it work. Several coworkers would make jokes of a not safe for work nature or occasionally comment, "Whoa, that was romantic," if we accidentally touched hands or hips. Two coworkers were joking about threesomes and being in a polycule with one of their boyfriends. They would even show me pictures of sex toys they purchased for each other. One of them even sent me a nude while we were on shift, which I nearly opened in front of a customer, and I snapped at him not to do that while another person laughed with him. I never reported him because we would joke about such things, and I thought it was all in good fun. He would initiate it and encourage it. Additionally, he was in a highly abusive situation and needed the job. When I pulled away from these colleagues and stopped joking in that manner, I thought that would resolve the issue. I have obsessive-compulsive disorder, am autistic, and present as a visibly masculine androgynous queer individual. I opened up too much about my identity while others were openly discussing their sex lives, being crude and ultimately exhibiting behavior that I should have reported first. I trusted them too much. Even if I did hurt someone, the way this was handled has left me in shock and disarray. I cannot stop experiencing intrusive thoughts about being told I was terminated, all the sexual jokes they shared with me, the images I received or was shown, and the idea of them laughing behind my back as if they prevailed. They got me fired, and I do not know what I did to deserve this. I was not informed of any specific behavior. I was simply told I was unsafe to work with due to the jokes I made. The co-owner mentioned he would let me express my side if I wanted to since it was evident that I felt remorseful. I sensed concern in his voice that something else might be at play. I stated that I understood the termination was final, that he was only now receiving this information, and that I would never deny anyone feeling uncomfortable around me if they expressed that. However, I went on to explain the situations I experienced before I chose to withdraw and modify my behavior. He assured me that he would indeed have a conversation with the individuals I referred to, but I have little hope considering how far they went to target someone they found merely annoying to work with. I apologize for the length of this post. I am still processing the situation. The few friends I have confided in have been very supportive and understanding, stating that it was clearly a form of social murder of a queer and autistic person. I am still trying to evaluate my behavior and genuinely understand how to improve in the future, but despite overanalyzing everything I did while on shift, I can only recall instances where coworkers approached me with sexual or crude comments. Yet I still do not wish to dismiss anyone's experience if I made them uncomfortable. At least it was just a trivial coffee shop. I am about to graduate and hopefully will secure a job in the field I desire, even though serving coffee was enjoyable for me.